family drama turns into a nightmare.
This woman came to help her sister out, and then she's found dead.
And all signs point to murder.
The brother-in-law threatened this woman, and the sisters were in fear of their lives.
Then, Dr. G is mystified by the sudden death of a healthy teenager.
And the family is devastated. They came here for a better life, and now their daughter is dead.
But when the mystery deepens with every clue, Dr. G begins to wonder if she'll ever find the answer.
I'm hoping this isn't a dead-end autopsy.
Altered lives, baffling medical mysteries, shocking revelations. These are the everyday cases of Dr. G, medical examiner.
Well, it's a busy day today. We have a lot of people, we just don't know why they died. Not a lot of obvious cases, so there's a lot of thinking while I'm doing the case. You know, sometimes death is anticipated, and sometimes it's just a lightning bolt. You know, none of these people thought they were going to be autopsied today. That's why we have to be really thankful for every day we have.
And when a life is cut short senselessly by a possible homicide, the stakes are even higher for Dr. G to solve the case.
The story is that this woman traveled all the way from Sydney, Australia to Orlando because her sister was having problems with her marriage. Her husband and her young son were supposed to get here today. And they're gonna go and spend the week at the theme parks and just enjoy the good weather here in Orlando. So she was really looking forward to spending some time with her husband and young child.
But on the morning of their arrival, Natalie fails to come down for breakfast.
Natalie?
Sandra goes upstairs to wake her sister.
Natalie?
But when she opens the door to Natalie's room, she's faced with a nightmare.
The sister walks in and finds her on the ground. She's just found collapsed.
Natalie?
Terrified, Sandra frantically dials 911.
No problem.
Paramedics arrive on the scene within minutes. But it's too late. Natalie is dead. Dr. G's medical investigator is immediately called to the scene.
When my investigator finds her, she's face down in her bedroom. It looks like she changed into her night clothes, but the bed looks like it hadn't been slept in. This is looking like whatever got her, it happened very quickly.
The victim's sister, Sandra, is beside herself with grief. And when questioned about Natalie's final hours, she reveals a shocking detail.
She told the police that last night her husband came over and was quite angry. They're getting a divorce, and he blames his wife's sister for the marriage dissolving. A big argument ensued, and it was very heated, and right before he left, he actually threatened this woman and told her she better watch her back. It was a warm summer night. They actually slept with the windows open. He certainly still is able to get in. And then the next morning, the sister's found dead. So in the back of the living sister's mind, she's really worried that the husband came back in and did something to her sister during the night. That's very disturbing because this is a violent man, and people in divorce situations, when marriages have dissolved, they do things that they really wouldn't normally do. And some terrible violent acts have occurred in these situations.
But police need more than just a hunch to open a murder investigation. They will need Dr. G to provide them with proof that it was a homicide.
This is a woman that really has no reason to be dead. She's only 45 years old, so we definitely have to investigate to make sure there's no foul play here. Oh boy, this is a sad one. Sometimes just the timing of the death makes some of these cases exceptionally cruel.
According to the investigators' report, Natalie's husband and 5-year-old son were on their way from Australia to join her on the day she died.
They were actually going to come and visit and stay for a week with her. So we can't even tell her husband and son that she had died yet because they're en route somewhere over the ocean right now. When you think of that little boy coming here to have fun, that's very sad.
But Dr. G can't afford to let her feelings get in the way of her work.
When you do a case like this, you put all of the sadness and the emotion aside because you have answers to get.
I don't know. I didn't see where they prescribed anything.
I'm not cold. I just have to get that out of my mind because if you dwell on that, you're not going to be able to do your job.
Give me about 3 sterile blades and then a little blue container with alcohol.
Although foul play is #1 on Dr. G's list, over 2 decades of performing autopsies tell her it's far too soon to jump to conclusions.
We don't know really what her cause of death is going to be. Everything's on the table at this point. There's so many possibilities on how she could have died, but really so few clues. According to the sister, she has these recurrent sinus headaches. And she was complaining that she was having headaches prior to going to bed, but many, many people have sinus headaches. She did die suddenly and unexpectedly, so maybe they weren't sinus headaches. Maybe it's something more sinister. Maybe it's a tumor. Maybe it's an infection of her sinuses that has gotten out of control. I don't know what's going on. This is really going to be a mystery.
Sandra also reveals that Natalie apparently suffered from heart palpitations.
Ew. Something's not sounding good.
All of a sudden, her heart would stop, but then it would start up again on its own. Maybe there is some type of heart disease going on. So I will really be focusing on her heart. We have a lot of possibilities on this case. We know she's having these sinus headaches. We've got history of maybe some heart disease. And we have the worry about foul play.
And if it is indeed a homicide, police will be eager to get answers from Dr. G before it's too late.
If I do find any evidence of foul play, the detectives will need to apprehend the prime suspect, but time is ticking, and this fellow may be fleeing the country for all I know. So there's a lot hanging on this autopsy.
The body of 45-year-old Natalie Hagen, who died suddenly under suspicious circumstances, has just arrived at the District 9 morgue.
Unfortunately, the husband and the son don't even know she's dead yet. The first thing they're going to want to know is what happened. She has an argument with her sister's estranged husband, and then she's found dead. What they're going to want to know is why she died. When you see her, she's got her nightgown on, she's got some curlers in her hair. She looks like she died suddenly.
Given that foul play is a likely culprit, Dr. G, assisted by technician Tom Hemphill, zeroes in on the neck and head, on the lookout for evidence of trauma.
I do palpate her scalp, and I don't really feel anything, but that's not unusual in somebody with a full head of hair like she has.
There's nothing there.
I'd also check to make sure that the neck shows no evidence of strangulation.
We'll do the neck, and then after you take that off, we'll see when we get in there.
I don't see a lot of trauma to her neck, but sometimes you won't see that, particularly if they take what's a towel or something across your neck. So she didn't have any external trauma that I can see, but you can't always tell on the outside, and you need to look on the inside. The only other thing I noticed is she had a little bit of froth coming out of her oral cavity. And one of the things you worry about when you see that is a drug overdose. She's clearly upset over this episode with her brother-in-law. Maybe she's combining alcohol with anti-anxiety drugs or alcohol with some kind of pain medication. You never know, but toxicology may be the answer.
Dr. G continues to scan Natalie's body, searching for any other clues that might explain her untimely death.
But she looks like she's in good health. All right, this is looking like a true mystery, and I love a mystery.
Let me open her up and see if I see anything.
Dr. G makes the standard Y incision across Natalie's chest, her eyes peeled for any signs of fatal trauma.
I look to see, is there any blood that has gotten into the tissues, into the muscles that would indicate like blows that I may not see on the skin.
No rib fractures, at least.
She doesn't have any of that. She doesn't have any rib fractures. Really, at first glance, nothing looks unusual, but I am still suspicious of foul play.
Dr. G still needs to look inside the head and neck for evidence of fatal injury. But first, she draws samples of Natalie's blood to send to toxicology.
Then the next thing I'm going to look at is the heart, because she's got kind of a wacky story about her heart stopping and starting. Maybe there is something wrong with her heart.
But as she inspects the organ more closely, Dr. G is surprised to see it's in better shape than she expected.
Her heart's not even that big. All right.
Her heart is of normal size, doesn't look like she has long-term high blood pressure. I look at the heart muscle itself. There's certainly no abnormalities.
Unfortunately, all of her heart problems, I don't see anything.
That clearly wasn't her cause of death.
Oh, well, I gotta move on to something else now.
The thorough inspection of Natalie's remaining organs reveals nothing out of the ordinary.
We're at a 6 by 3 centimeter.
The liver looks beautiful. Her spleen is of normal size. Her kidneys looked okay. Everything looks good.
Unfortunately, I don't see anything.
I'll tell you later.
Now that I've taken all those organs out, I can really dissect the neck because I'm worried that maybe he strangled her.
Dr. G is anxious to get a look at Natalie's hyoid, a small bone in the neck. If she was strangled to death, it's possible that it was damaged.
That can be broken quite readily with strangulation. But that hyoid bone was completely normal, no indication whatsoever that she was strangled.
I don't know. I'm not sour grapes. But...
That is very disappointing. I have no really good reason why she should be dead. I ruled out strangulation to her neck. I ruled out any kind of trauma to her chest and abdomen. And I've ruled out most natural diseases that I can see. But something going on in the brain is a possibility. And there was a death threat against this woman right before she was found dead. So I'm still worried that there is some foul play involved. Maybe a blow to the head from that angry brother-in-law of hers.
And with Natalie's family due to arrive in Orlando within hours, the pressure to close this case is mounting.
Okay, guys. They don't even know she's dead yet. I can't give them their mom back, but I was really hoping to at least give them an answer right away.
Dr. G carefully cuts a slit across the back of Natalie's head, from ear to ear, reflecting the scalp.
I'm looking for a blow to the back of the head, maybe from an assailant, but I don't see anything there. Now I'm worried, am I gonna get a cause of death?
But in some cases, fatal trauma can only be seen on the brain itself.
So we'll see what's on the inside.
Now you want to open her head. Go ahead.
Now, morgue technician Tom Hemphill saws off the skull cap, exposing the brain. And when Dr. G steps in to take a closer look, she's stunned by what she sees.
Oh, something's wrong here.
I'm shocked. There is something going on. I may have just found her killer.
Dr. G has just made a shocking discovery inside the brain of 45-year-old Natalie Hagen, found dead on her bedroom floor after an argument with her brother-in-law the night before.
What the heck is that?
I'm shocked. She's got bleeding over the brain. It was nasty. The surviving sister said her husband is a violent man. He's very angry. And I'm thinking, he might have hit her on the head. So I carefully remove the brain, and I very carefully take a little water and just try to kind of wash off some of that blood. And lo and behold, I see why she died. This trumps everything.
Dr. G contacts the authorities to share her discovery.
You know, the police can't wait till I get the answer, because there's a lot hanging on this autopsy.
On the last day of her life, Natalie Hagen is feeling on top of the world.
She is so excited about her husband and son coming over from Australia, and they're going to spend the week here in Orlando and go to all the theme parks and have fun.
But her excitement is abruptly cut short by a disturbing visit from her brother-in-law.
He actually ends up threatening her because he blames her for ruining the marriage with her sister. They were in fear of their lives. He was getting so angry.
You don't want your back.
He leaves, and she gets ready for bed, and she was complaining that her sinus headaches were coming back. She's taking a lot of aspirin. She puts her nightgown on. She puts her few curlers in her hair, but she's still really shaken by it.
But unbeknownst to anyone, there is something terribly wrong deep inside Natalie's brain.
She's a walking time bomb because she has this weakened wall of the blood vessel.
Over time, this weakened wall causes the vessel to bulge or balloon out. This is commonly referred to as a baryaneurysm.
We really don't know what causes it. We don't know why some people have them and some people don't, but it's not uncommon. At least 2% of the population will have some type of little aneurysm. Is that what she was feeling with those sinus headaches? I doubt it. Many people have sinus headaches. Usually it's associated with allergies and irritants. I think those were a red herring. I don't think that had anything to do with the aneurysm. She probably had that weakness in the wall for years, but she probably didn't develop that aneurysm until she was in adulthood. Unfortunately, over time, they get bigger and bigger to the point where they can burst. But not that many people actually have them burst and die from them.
Unfortunately, Natalie is one of those unlucky few.
She's just had this argument with her brother-in-law, and although he didn't kill her, because he really never did lay a hand on her, ultimately, in a way, it was the straw that broke the camel's back. It is her reaction to what he's saying to her that killed her. That stress is causing her blood pressure to be higher than normal.
And this sets into motion a deadly chain of events.
That blood vessel, which had weakened over years, finally can't take the stress of this elevated blood pressure and bursts open. And the blood just starts rushing out.
As the blood builds up inside her brain, it places unbearable pressure on the organ.
And causes her to lose consciousness immediately, and she starts developing a slight amount of fluid in her lungs.
This fluid is then expelled from the lungs into the mouth, which explains the froth Dr. G found during the external exam. And within the space of a few minutes, Natalie dies.
Oh boy, it looks about the time when her husband and her son are just getting off the plane.
This happened so suddenly and unexpectedly. It's just going to be hard for them to believe. It's cruel for the husband, but it's twice as cruel for the son, who expects to be here with his mom and have fun.
Natalie's sister Sandra takes comfort in the knowledge that she wasn't murdered, but she is shattered by the loss and will now go through the divorce alone. However, Natalie's death also serves as an important reminder of the unpredictability of life.
We really don't know when our time is. We don't know what's going on inside, and you really need to appreciate every day for what it is. And it just makes you want to appreciate life and appreciate what you have.
As a medical examiner, Dr. G copes with tragic, untimely death every day. But some cases feel particularly unjust.
This girl, who's only 18 years old, supposedly perfectly healthy girl, she plays soccer, and then dies rather suddenly and unexpectedly after about 3 days of not feeling well. It was just a really sad experience for the family, as oftentimes my cases are.
Now, Dr. G must help the grieving family find out why their loved one died so young.
It's devastating to them, and they really want to know what happened. The answers are going to lie in the autopsy. The case today is of an 18-year-old girl. She's from Nigeria, and she's only been in the country for about a year. She immigrated here with her family.
For Eugenie Ademola, life in St. Cloud, Florida is off to a promising start. She is making friends on the local soccer team and plans to begin college in the fall.
She's loving life in the United States. She's on a soccer team. She's got a job over the summer working as a store clerk. And then all of a sudden, she gets what they think is a flu. And for about 4 days, she's not feeling well, thinking it's going to pass.
Instead, it only gets worse. Eugenie starts to experience chest pain and begins vomiting. Her mother is worried and insists that she see a doctor.
She goes to one of those walk-in clinics, and they give her anti-nausea medicine, promethazine, to keep her from vomiting. And then that evening, she's vomiting some more and feeling horrible.
Later that night, her younger brother Louis goes to check on her and is met with a terrifying sight.
The brother walks in to see how she's feeling, and he finds her collapsed on the floor.
Eugenie is barely conscious. Her eyes are rolling to the back of her head, and she's gasping for breath.
The mom went in there to help her and noticed she had vomited up some kind of blackish material that really looks almost bloody.
Louis calls 911, and the paramedics race to the home and do all they can to save her.
They're trying to resuscitate her, but she's never able to recover. I mean, the family is devastated. They came here for a better life, and now their daughter is dead.
Now it's up to Dr. G to find out what took this young girl's life too soon.
You feel sorry for the family. They have no idea why she could have died. I want to know what's happening to her.
Dr. G is determined to crack the case of Eugenie Ademola, a healthy 18-year-old girl whose brother watched her die just 12 hours ago.
This case, right from the start, is probably going to be a medical mystery. I don't know why she died. The autopsy is going to be key.
Dr. G starts by scouring the medical investigator's report for any clue to the girl's killer.
She's 18. You know, 18-year-olds do really stupid things.
We see people of this age group in the morgue a lot. We see drug overdoses. She has some friends and buddies on that soccer team that'll give her something. I hope it wasn't a drug overdose.
But as Dr. G continues to read Eugenie's history, another possibility jumps to the top of her list of suspects: a deadly disease that strikes college-age kids and begins with flu-like symptoms.
One of the things you worry about is meningitis. That would be a bacterial infection of the meninges, the covering over the brain. That can cause you to die very quickly. But then you have that whole other dimension. Could she be dying from some illness from Africa? Or maybe it's something she wasn't vaccinated against that she got here, like a fulminant chickenpox or measles or hepatitis. It's wide open at this point. All right.
We need to figure out what it is we're gonna buy.
Okay, so we have... The mom noticed she had vomited up what looked like some bloody fluid. Maybe something happened in her GI tract. You really start wondering about an ulcer or a erosion of the lining of the stomach. Is that what got her? We don't know what she's got. We just have this really short history that she's completely well, and then she gets sick and dies. The list of things that could have killed this poor girl is very long until we narrow it down. And I don't know until I look at her and do the autopsy, and then we'll put the pieces of the puzzle together. It's a sad day. This one's only a young kid. Overall, when you look at her, she looks good. She's a muscular girl, she's a young girl. She doesn't look that ill to me. So, blood. When I look into her oral cavity and inside her nose, she does have some blackish fluid that looks like it's a little bit of blood. I'm worried about that.
Next, Dr. G scans the body for signs of infectious disease.
I think I did it. I put a mark here. Where did I put the mark? I'm looking for lesions of chickenpox. I'm looking for measles. I'm looking for a rash that could occur with meningococcal meningitis. But because of her skin color, some of those rashes may be a little harder for me to see.
Yeah, that's just
I was hoping that the external would give us a more specific hint of the infection, and I don't really see any of that.
hardly see anything.
I don't see any signs of drug use on her, but nowadays the #1 drug that people abuse is going to be prescription medication, and we don't see that externally. And I think I'll wait to see what the rest of her autopsy shows. Although what I'm most worried about is a meningitis or an infection, I'm always looking for trauma. Could she have collapsed and hit her head, and that ultimately be what caused her death? But I didn't see any. There is no evidence of a scalp contusion. There were no skull fractures.
Dr. G then peels back the scalp, and technician John Gilmartin cuts open the skull.
I will remove the skull cap and get our first look at the brain. If she does have a bacterial meningitis, oftentimes we'll see it as a clouding.
Let's see if we can see anything.
Her brain, the covering of her brain, showed no evidence of infection. So I've pretty much ruled out meningitis visually, but I need to wait for the cultures, and I will take a piece and look under the microscope, because occasionally you may not pick it up with your eyes.
Oh, well, I gotta move on to something else now.
I'm gonna turn my attention now to the rest of her body, because I really don't think the answer's in the brain.
Dr. G opens the body with a Y incision, and at first glance, she is taken aback.
Oh my gosh, it's not looking good. What really strikes me is that she's got a lot of enlarged lymph nodes. Lymph nodes are collections of white cells that form in the body, and we see them all over. That's part of your immune system.
The tissues aren't right.
I'm like, there's got to be something going on that we don't know about, and it's something a little more serious.
Dr. G has just opened the body of 18-year-old Eugenie Adamola and is shocked by what she sees.
Wow, look at that. There's something going on right there. She's got enlarged lymph nodes, and a lot of them, and very big. Some of them about an inch and a half.
The lymph nodes are small glands throughout the body that are an integral part of the immune system whose purpose is to fight infection.
That's part of your immune system, but they get very enlarged if they're being revved up, and an infection would tend to rev it up, or possibly even a cancer. So I'm worried maybe there's a cancer that's taken over, maybe a lymphoma or a tumor of the lymph system. I certainly need to take some of those lymph nodes and look under the microscope and see what's going on.
But it will be days before the micros come back from the lab, and the autopsy is far from over.
You have to keep an open mind when you do an autopsy. You rule out this and you rule out that, and you prove it's not that, and you prove it's not that, until you can find something.
Dr. G now draws blood and fluid for toxicology.
We got the blood. Need anything else? You always got to do that tox, because that sometimes surprisingly has the answer. You know, did she take anything that may have caused her death? You never know until you test it. Look, it's coming through here. Look at that. At one point I was thinking, could she have died from just bleeding into her GI tract? But lo and behold, she's not bleeding at all in her GI tract. She has no blood in her stomach and no evidence of any kind of irritation or ulcer to her GI tract. So whatever is causing this black stuff to come out, it's not coming out of her GI tract.
Dr. G then moves on to the liver and spleen. The liver is normal, but the spleen, an organ that is part of the immune system and helps fight infection, is not.
Her spleen is firm, slightly enlarged. At this point, I'm worried that she does have some type of infectious process going on, but I haven't even ruled out a cancer yet, a particular lymphoma, because of all those big lymph nodes.
Next, Dr. G examines the heart.
Maybe she's got a viral infection inside the muscle of the heart, and that can cause a sudden death.
Dr. G takes out Eugenie's heart, weighs it, and examines the muscle and arteries.
She's got very nice coronary arteries. Her heart's completely normal. No evidence of congenital abnormalities.
As each lead slips through her fingers, Dr. G wonders if she'll ever find an answer. She now pins her hopes on finding a clue in the lungs.
Doesn't look right. Yeah. Her lungs looked really bad. She has a lot of hemorrhage and a lot of fluid in the lungs. I don't know how she was breathing at all. I don't know what's going on. They didn't show what I would say is classic pneumonia. In a typical pneumonia, we'd see kind of a lumpy, bumpy pattern because the white cells fill up the air spaces. I don't feel that. Oh gosh, I don't. But the lungs definitely don't look right, and I can't explain it. I'm not going to be able to tell until I look under the microscope. When I finish the autopsy, the main thing I really need to look at is what's going on in those lymph nodes and what's going on in those lungs. So I'm really eager to get those slides back.
2 days after the autopsy, the lab work is delivered to the morgue.
The first thing I'm going to look for is those microscopics of her lymph nodes.
Let's see if we can see anything.
I look at the lymph nodes, and there's no evidence of a lymphoma. So I've ruled out cancer of the lymphocytes, but they look more just that they were enlarged and stimulated. That's why I'm thinking, boy, she probably does have some infection going on in those lungs.
Dr. G immediately checks the cultures and discovers she is right.
It's clear she's got a very virulent or aggressive Staph aureus bacterial infection. The staph infection is actually causing death to the tissues in her lung, incompatible with life. Certainly, that's why she died. But what doesn't make sense is why would somebody so young, you think, perfectly healthy, die from this?
Then Dr. G combs through all the lab results, and there in one single test, she finally finds the answer.
I am shocked. This was unexpected, totally unexpected.
Dr. G has just discovered that Eugenie Ademola died from a massive staph infection in the lungs.
But it's hard to wrap around the fact that this girl that's so healthy, soccer player one week and dead the next, why she has this virulent Staph aureus infection. And then I got another shock.
Finally, the result of one test in the lab report gives her the astonishing answer.
When I was looking through all of her labs at the end, I noticed that the test for HIV, human immunodeficiency virus, was positive. Oh my, that was lightning out of the blue. She's a young, healthy girl, and we really didn't think that was the possibility. But her HIV surprised us. She didn't give us any warning signs that she would have HIV. She certainly didn't have any history of sharing needles or being a drug user.
Finally, Dr. G knows exactly what happened.
I have her cause of death. I finally put it together with that last clue.
Just 1 week before her death, Eugenie is playing soccer and working to save for college.
She's feeling good. There's nothing bothering her. And then all of a sudden, she's not feeling well. She's really starting to feel bad.
Eugenie takes over-the-counter cold medication, but it doesn't help. Then, fate delivers a brutal blow.
For whatever reason, she gets exposed to a Staph aureus, a bacteria. That bacteria starts taking hold.
Staph bacteria are everywhere and are not usually life-threatening, especially for an athletic teenage girl. But what Eugenie doesn't know is that she is also infected with human immunodeficiency virus, or HIV.
I don't know how she got HIV. We didn't know anything about her sexual activity, and she certainly didn't use needles.
The most likely explanation is that she got it through sexual contact.
She's clearly just infected with the HIV virus. Things are happening inside of her body that she's not even aware of. The virus is attacking lymphocytes. It's causing her lymph nodes to grow, trying to fight off the infection.
Her spleen is also enlarged, going into overdrive trying to combat the HIV. When her immune system is then invaded by toxic staph bacteria, it is too weak to defend itself.
She got the double whammy in that her immune system had already been compromised with the HIV virus, so it was even harder for her to fight off this type of bacteria.
Within days, the bacteria latch onto her lungs, causing a fatal infection.
When that bacteria starts taking hold in her lungs is when she really starts getting sick. Her body defenses can't keep that bacteria in check, and once it starts growing, producing that toxin in her lungs, it's taking over. She has a rapid downhill course, more difficulty breathing because she's getting more and more necrosis or death to some of the tissue, more hemorrhage in her lungs. She's probably coughing up some of this blood, swallowing it and vomiting it, which is making her feel even worse.
By the time Eugenie's mother takes her to the clinic, the staph infection is on its way to killing her. And unfortunately, she is misdiagnosed with the flu and sent home with anti-nausea medication.
She could have died just from the extent of the bleeding inside of her lungs, but that bacteria is also growing and reproducing and eventually gets into her bloodstream.
Once the infection enters her bloodstream, Eugenie's weakened body is unable to fight anymore. One by one, her organs shut down.
This cascade of events causes her blood pressure to drop to the point where she then just collapses, and she ultimately dies. This was not what I expected she died from. Her family obviously is sad no matter why she died. They're particularly upset that she died so quickly. That's always hard to take. And then we have to tell her on top that she had HIV infection.
Dr. G can't be sure if Eugenie contracted HIV in Africa, where AIDS is a major epidemic, or in the US, where an estimated 50,000 new cases of HIV are diagnosed each year.
I don't think she knew she had HIV infection. Her family certainly didn't know. We didn't have any record that we could find that she'd ever been tested here in the United States. I do know that she would have been tested prior to coming over here. And if they'd have known at that time that she was infected, they probably wouldn't have let her immigrate. Because you, at this time, could not even get into the United States with a positive HIV unless you had some kind of special waiver. So, it was just a really sad experience for the family, as oftentimes my cases are.
It's a very slow indolent infection, and that's why we're trying to get everybody between 13 and 64 in the United States tested, because you can be infected for a long, long time, not know it. You can spread it to other people.
We need to start thinking not of HIV as a stigma, but as a normal disease. We need to routinely test for it and not think of it as some kind of horrible thing, because nowadays there's good treatment. It's not the death sentence it used to be. You can outlive the disease. You can die from something else if you treat it well.
Come back to me.
We'll get into your true crime episode in just a moment. When this one is finished though, make sure your next listen comes from the Always True Crime Network. This show is a part of it, and so is Drunk Women Solving Crime. Every week, comedians Hannah George and Taylor Glenn are joined by a famous face to put their drunk detective skills to the test. The recent episode with Selena Mozinski, also known as Charity Shop Sue, is a must-listen, featuring a story involving riot police, a chimney, and an unexpected ending. And there's more alternative true crime from Strangely as well. Poppy Damon and Luke Jones bring together some of the weirdest true stories from around the world. If you haven't heard about the post-work fishing trip that took an extraterrestrial turn, that should definitely be your next listen. Search for Always True Crime to find these shows and more.
From the late 1950s to the mid-1960s, the bodies of 8 sex workers, Elizabeth Figg, Gwyneth Reese, Hannah Telford, Irene Lockwood, Helen Barthélemy, Mary Fleming, Margaret McGowan and Bridget O'Hara, were found dumped in or near the River Thames in West London. Panic spread that a sadistic serial killer was on the loose who targeted young petite brunettes. Stripped them naked except for maybe a stocking. Erased all evidence of their identity. Strangled them, possibly extracted some of their teeth. Dumped each body within weeks and streets of each other, but never raped or mutilated them. Yet with not a single witness to his crimes, even though several suspects have since been named. With no convictions, it's a series of killings which remains a mystery to this day. Created in collaboration with the True Crime Enthusiast podcast, across this joint 8-part series, Paul and I will rip apart 60 years worth of myths, lies, misinformation, and conspiracies of one of London's greatest unsolved serial killings, to make you rethink what you know or have been told about Jack the Stripper. My name is Michael, I'm your tour guide, and this is Murder Mile. Episode 347, Undressing Jack the Stripper, Part A of D. The first two killings initially attributed to Jack the Stripper were Elizabeth Figg, whose body was found propped up against a tree in Duke's Meadows on the 7th of June 1959, and Gwyneth Reese, who was found in a waste pit over the river on Townmead Road in Mortlake on the 8th of November 1963. Throughout the 7 years of the investigation, from the first killing to the case's closure, the murders of Elizabeth Figg and Gwyneth Reese have always been unofficial. Detectives could see the similarities and links between these two murders and the other 6, but in every report, just as in every news article, sometimes Figg is listed as the first victim, sometimes it's Reese, and other times it's neither. So were they the first killings of Jack the Stripper, or were they entirely unconnected? Elizabeth Figg, known as Betty, was born on the 24th of March 1938 in Bebington, Cheshire, to James and Eliza Figg. Described as small, slim, with hazel eyes and dark hair tinged with auburn highlights. Being softly spoken, Betty was a girl who never spoke much, and looking for love, she was easily led. Her need to be loved began in her infancy when her mother had an affair while her father was serving in Canada. Her parents split, her father remarried twice, and maybe resenting his own daughter, James said of Elizabeth,
"You're a filthy slut, just like your mother."
So by 1956, aged 18, Elizabeth left home. She struggled through a series of poorly paid jobs in hotels and factories. She reconnected with her mother, who had remarried and was living in South London. And although they lived together briefly, always arguing, Elizabeth never felt loved or wanted by her own family, and was again alone. In March 1959, 3 months before her murder, while riding the London Underground, 21-year-old Elizabeth Figg, who earned a pittance as a babysitter, met and fell in love with Fenwick Ward, a roly-poly 17-stone boxer from Trinidad and Tobago who was known as Baby. He was 7 years away from being the sparring partner to Henry Cooper in his world heavyweight fight against Cassius Clay, later renamed Muhammad Ali. And back then, he was living in Stamford Hill and struggling to make ends meet. It was suggested that he wasn't only her boyfriend, but also her pimp, as although Elizabeth had no criminal record, within weeks of meeting him, she'd quit babysitting. He'd moved her into a bedsit at 79 Dunscombe Road in Archway, North London. He bought her some pretty clothes. Her flatmate was a sex worker, and with at least one partner elsewhere, Baby Ward saw Elizabeth just once a week. This is how pimps lure young girls into sex work, by pretending that they love them. By June 1959, although she'd only been selling herself for sex for a few weeks, she already had an alias, Anne Phillips, a regular cab driver, and a strict routine. As hooking up with 19-year-old Pauline Mills, her flatmate and an experienced sex worker. They prowled for clients in nearby Haringey, North London, but as the construction workers on the Victoria Line extension tended to be a little too drunk and abusive by 11 p.m, they headed 6 miles south to the more affluent borough of Holland Park in London's West End. Tuesday the 16th of June 1969 was one of the best summers on record, with Britain being bathed in a heatwave of 27 degrees. At 6:30 p.m, she left home wearing a dark blue, blackish and white striped dress. She wore no makeup. She wore no knickers, just a slip. She wore a pair of black stilettos and carried a white circular handbag in which she held her keys, a compact, and a maroon diary. She headed to Baby's house on Dunsmore Road in Stamford Hill. At 7:45 p.m, she left, and went to her dressmaker, Eileen Simmons, 7 minutes walk away on Durley Road. She left at 9:05 p.m, saying she was going to Aldgate, East London, but she went instead to Finsbury Park, North London. That was the last independent sighting of Elizabeth by someone who knew her and was least likely to have killed her. Everything after this point is speculative. At 11:40 p.m, Elizabeth was picked up on Endymion Road in Finsbury Park by Ernest Patrick Forrester of Stamford Hill, a 36-year-old builder and married man driving his Morris 10. This is unusual, as very few clients who had sex with any of these dead women ever came forward. But said to be gripped by Catholic guilt, Ernest did. He told the police he wanted to spend the night with her for £4, but she said she had an appointment at 2 a.m. Who and where is unknown. So they had sex in the back of his car on Mount View Road. At about 12:30 a.m, he drove her 40 minutes south to Holland Park tube station as requested. And after that, she vanished. Between 1 and 3:10 a.m, he said he drove around the West End, biding his time. He arrived back to meet her at 3:10 p.m. as agreed, but told the police
she never showed up.
He was seen by 2 police officers who asked him to move on, and he said that he was unaware of her murder until it was reported in the newspapers. Fenwick Baby Ward, who was described as a violent ponce, thug, and very capable of the killing, was said to have been shocked when he heard about her murder and voluntarily gave a statement to the police. Ernest Forrest, her amorous client, gave up his car and his flat for forensic inspection, and as his alibi checked out, as did Fenwick's, they were both ruled out, and neither were considered a prime suspect. There were no further sightings of Elizabeth Figg until her body was found a few hours later. 4 miles southwest of Holland Park, police car Foxtrot 4 drove into Duke's Meadows, an unlit 31-acre field surrounded by no houses on the north bank of the River Thames between Barnes and Chiswick Bridges, and regularly used by couples and sex workers as a lover's lane. PC Mills, Spark and Acting Sergeant Baker had already patrolled this site at 12:30 a.m, but at 5:10 a.m, they found her body. 180 metres west of Barnes Bridge, where the boat race finishes, they first spotted her legs sticking out of the long grass. They then saw her body, and this is where some of the misinformation begins. The pathologist stated that her time of death was between midnight and 2 a.m. Bert Hutton, pub landlord of the Ship on the south bank immediately opposite, stated that he and his wife saw headlights and heard a woman scream at 12:05 a.m, which detectives stated
pinpoints the moment when Elizabeth was killed.
Which of course poses a problem, as either the witnesses were mistaken, or Ernest Forrest wasn't having sex with Elizabeth at that moment in Finsbury Park. A sinister element of this murder which hinted at a cruel, calm and calculated killer was that Elizabeth was said to have been propped up against a willow tree, her legs crossed, her head against the trunk, and posed as if she was sleeping. But having checked to see if she was alive, the police officers couldn't confirm if she was lying down when they found her, or if they propped her up when they finished. As for her dress, it was said to be
torn at the waist and opened to reveal her breasts,
which hinted at a rapist. But no forced sexual intercourse was discovered, and even though some blood was found on her anus, police also suggested
tears to the dress were caused when the body was dragged from the car.
Her underwear wasn't found, but then she was only wearing a slip. Her shoes were missing, but having sex in the back seat of a car, it would have made sense for her to remove them. She had no identification on her, but although robbery looked unlikely, having been attacked inside a client's car, her handbag may have remained there until it was found a while later and then dumped or burnt. Police believe she died during failed intercourse and was swiftly overpowered, hence there were few cuts or bruises to her body and no hint of self-defense. fractures to her hyoid bone and bruises to her neck confirm that she was manually strangled by a right-handed man, possibly in a peak of anger. And although it's uncertain where she died, detectives believe her killer drove her body to Duke's Meadows. The investigation was headed up by Detective Superintendent James Mitchell. The area was searched, courting couples were questioned, forensic scientists took samples, and although the police asked any pimps, prostitutes or punters to come forward, none did, except Ernest Forrester and Fenwick Baby Ward. The autopsy was conducted at Hammersmith Mortuary by homeless pathologist Dr. Donald Tier, and with her cause of death being asphyxiation due to manual strangulation, it was not unlike any other murdered prostitutes whose deaths he had examined in his 20 years as a doctor of pathology. With roughly 60,000 UK sex workers in the early part of the 1960s, reports state they were 18 times more likely to be murdered than the general public, but their deaths were least likely to be solved. The biggest conundrum for the police wasn't who her killer was, as experience had told them he was unlikely to be identified or hand himself in, as prostitution is a clandestine and illegal affair, but also the identity of the victim herself, as she had no handbag, no purse, no tattoos, and no criminal record. In an unusual move, as no one matching her description was listed as missing, on the 13th of August 1959, her autopsy photo was published in the national papers, and Elizabeth Figg was formally identified. The press called this the Willow Tree Murder. There was no talk of a serial killer dumping bodies in the Thames as she was found on land, and there was no gossip about Jack the Stripper as she wasn't nude. Police had no likely suspects, and yet there was no real mystery as to who had murdered her, as it was likely to be a client. And given her inexperience, she may not have known how to handle someone who was drunk, aggressive, and made sexual demands she wasn't willing to accept. As often happens, the case collapsed, with the uncaring public saying,
"She probably had it coming."
On the 14th of August 1959, at Ealing Coroner's Court, Elizabeth's death was ruled as murder by persons unknown. She was buried in a communal grave at Chiswick New Cemetery, and although her mother had identified her body, the only people at the funeral was a priest, a gravedigger, and Detective Superintendent James Mitchell. With no new evidence, the case closed, and it was linked to no other. As happens with every murder, the usual busybodies and attention seekers came forward to help. Paddy Evans, a homeless man who claimed to be illiterate and ignorant of the case, said he'd found a pair of black stilettos, a white handbag, a maroon diary, and a pair of knickers on the towpath between Putney and Hammersmith bridges. He confessed to taking the money, 14 shillings and 2p, and said,
"I threw the handbag, diary and shoes into the river and used the underclothing as a pillow."
He also claimed that he found her dress, but she died in that. So was this hers, someone else's, or a lie to get off an assault charge? The press also tried to link this to the attack on 17-year-old model Anne Lewington in Chiswick 24 hours before, and although a scruffy man in jeans was sought, police said,
"We do not think there is a link."
3 days after the murder, the Evening News reported that teenagers Marion Pendrell and June Inman were chased along the towpath by a man with staring eyes. Sex workers reported the same thing, and with a short and tubby man with greying temples having attempted to strangle a prostitute in Chiswick just a few days later. Sex workers were unnerved, but very soon everyone forgot about the Willow Tree murder. So was Elizabeth Figg the first killing by Jack the Stripper? Or was her murder just part of this blossoming myth? It is said that Jack the Stripper was attracted to young petite brunettes, and that all of his victims fitted this type. Only they didn't. Figg, Reese and Barthélemy were all 22, but as all age ranged from 21 to 30, and as the average age of a female sex worker in 1960s London was 23, this is unremarkable. As for hair colour, all were natural brunettes, but only Reese, Tailford, Barthélemy, Fleming and McGowan kept it natural. Figg's was tinged auburn, O'Hara had highlights, and Lockwood's was dyed strawberry blonde. And as for their height, it was reported that all of them were around 5'2", 1 to 2.5 inches shorter than the 1960s average, with some of them being shorter still. But Elizabeth Figg was mistakenly listed in an initial police report as 5'2", and not 5'5.5", and said to be wearing 2-inch heels. At the time of her murder, she was the same height as the average 1960s male. So it seems unlikely that these women were murdered by a serial killer obsessed with a specific type of woman, as there was very little which physically links them, except being someone he could overpower. Other tenuous links between each victim were made, including being pregnant, which led to a theory that they were all murdered during a botched illegal abortion. But only Reese, Tailford and Lockwood were expecting. And although the press tried to suggest that the killer was a disgruntled client who'd been infected with an STD by one of these women, even today there are 400,000 new cases of STDs a year amongst the general population, and there was no concrete proof that any of these women had a sexual disease. But this kind of victim blaming harks back to the 1880s and his namesake, Jack the Ripper. There was a desperation among the press, and to an extent the police, to find anything to link these 8 women. But they had other similarities which were equally as irrelevant. Most had tattoos, drink problems, drug issues, were single or separated, came from the provinces, had run away from home, had abandoned their children. Several even went to the same jazz club. Many carried address books and diaries which were never found. And on the night they were killed, several wore the colour green. Ooh. But are any of these the reason that an alleged serial killer was stalking them? Or is this just a coincidence? Based on Elizabeth Figg's murder, years before Jack the Stripper was even mentioned, police psychiatrists said her killer was most likely
a very tidy person with an eye for detail.
Someone calm and mature, as they had clearly posed her under a tree as if she was sleeping. The problem was they'd mistakenly assumed that it was the killer who'd propped her up, and not the police who admitted they may have done that. All 8 victims were said to have been soliciting in or near Bayswater, Queensway and Notting Hill in London's West End. But Elizabeth Figg mostly stuck to Haringey, Finsbury Park and occasionally Holland Park, and Gwyneth Reese mostly stuck to Stepney and Whitechapel, 11 miles away in the East End. And this doesn't even begin to tackle that it's unlikely that either of these 2 unofficial murders, being Elizabeth Figg and Gwyneth Reese, that they might not even be connected. As although both bodies were found by the River Thames less than half a mile apart, Figg's body was dumped in plain sight on Duke's Meadows and found just a few hours later. But Reese's was only unearthed by accident after 40 days. And with 4 years and 5 months between both of these killings, if this gap meant that their killer was in prison, it would have led to a suspect. But it didn't. The second unofficial victim of Jack the Stripper was Gwyneth Reese, one of 5 siblings to Gwilym and Amelia Reese, who, being born on the 6th of August 1941 in Barry, a coastal town in South Wales, had a predictably hard and loveless upbringing, especially as her mother died when Gwyneth was just 16. As was common with many working-class girls of that era, she earned an honest pittance in a soulless manual job. She had a rebellious streak. She was bounced between homes, and with condoms hard to buy and the contraceptive pill not free for all women under the NHS until 1974, she was frequently pregnant. Her first child was in 1958, when she was 17, who her older sister Joan would look after when Gwyneth abandoned her. And her second was born in 1962, both of whom would be given up for adoption. Gwyneth was lost and seeking a love that she'd been denied back home, but she didn't seem to know where to find it. In March 1958, she moved to London, hoping to seek a better life, but all it brought was hardship and pain. In the 4 years she had lived here, she had 28 known addresses. She used at least 3 aliases, Georgette Reese, Tina Smart and Tina Dawson, and had 13 convictions for theft and 12 for soliciting. As was the curse of sex work in that era, twice in 1960 and 61, she'd self-aborted, resulting in sickness. And now, she was 5 months pregnant. This was where the theory that some of the victims of Jack the Stripper were as a result of an illegal backstreet abortion. But only 3 of the 8 were pregnant, and given the decomposition of Gwyneth's body when she was found, that was impossible to prove or disprove. She moved out of her shared basement apartment on Warrener Gardens in Battersea on the 12th of September 1963. Where she lived after that is uncertain, and wearing a fake leopard skin coat, a white jumper, a black skirt, tan stockings, and 3-inch heels, which made her 5'6". She was last seen on Sunday the 29th of September, getting into a 2-tone Consul or Ford Zodiac on the junction of Commercial Road and New Road in Stepney, East London. Nowhere near Duke's Meadow, Bayswater, Finsbury Park or Holland Park. It was said she had angered someone in the weeks before she vanished, and her disappearance was only reported in late October when she failed to turn up to one of her sister's weddings in Barry. On the 8th of November 1963, 40 days after she'd vanished, Patrick Deneen, a mechanical digger driver at the Barnesborough Council refuse site on Townsmead Road in Mortlake, just over the river from Duke's Meadows, which is why both murders were linked. He noted a fetid stench coming from the mix of household waste, rotting meat and fire ash. Digging 2 feet down into weeks of rubbish, as he raised up his scoop, he spotted a sickening sight. The bare and badly decomposed legs of a young woman. The investigation was headed up by Detective Superintendent Fred Chadburn and DS James Mitchell, who'd overseen Elizabeth's murder. But both cases wouldn't be linked by the police until the 3rd victim. With no witnesses to her killing, no possible suspects cited, and no idea when she was dumped, the autopsy conducted by Professor Arthur Mant at Kingston Mortuary was inconclusive. Cause of death was unknown, owing to the fact that much of her body and internal organs had putrefied, and she'd accidentally been decapitated and partially crushed by the mechanical digger as they levelled the site. She was clearly pregnant, but an illegal abortion couldn't be proven. Several of her teeth were missing, and although this too would become a so-called trope of the killer, the decay in the digger were a factor. A sexual or physical assault couldn't be determined. Her date of death was somewhere between 4 to 8 weeks, and with an X-ray at Guy's Hospital finding a broken hyoid bone in her neck, determining that prior to death she may have been strangled, it was impossible to tell if this had killed her or not. She was identified by fingerprint as Gwyneth Reese, having been linked to her police record. But again, there was no gossip about a serial killer stalking sex workers. And even though she was the first to be found naked, except for a single nylon stocking on her right leg, which is why the victims of Jack the Stripper would later be dubbed by the tabloid press as the Hammersmith Nudes, nobody cared. The Daily Mirror listed her as dead rubbish tip girl, but her killing was barely reported. An appeal was made, but as would become all too common in all 8 murders, no one was convicted. The inquest at Kingston Coroner's Court ruled that, owing to the severe decomposition of the body, as it was impossible to tell if she died by an illegal abortion, that strangulation was only a possibility, and that an assault or a willful murder could never be proven, they recorded an open verdict. With word circulating that Gwyneth had angered someone in the weeks before her death, detectives interviewed the 3 most likely suspects. Her boyfriend, Mickey Calvi, a cruel gangster who, having demanded money from her, had threatened her with an axe and had her beaten up by his gang in the weeks prior. George Kitchener-Dixon, his right-hand man, enforcer, and an associate of the Gray twins, whose lawyer advised him to say nothing. And Cornelius Whitehead, who'd beaten her black and blue when she moved to a rival pimp in September 1963. And around that time, just weeks before she vanished, it was said,
word on the street was that he was looking for her to teach her a lesson.
But a wall of silence protected them all. None could be proven to have played a part in her death. But it is likely. And that's it. No stripper, no serial killer. Just one woman possibly killed by a punter, and the other likely killed by a pimp, none of which were connected, except in a very tenuous way, if you omit some of the facts. But with the 1960s being the height of tabloid journalism, links were made for the sake of circulation. On the 27th of November 1963, 2 weeks after her body was found, the Evening News wrote,
Revenge motive in girl's murder. 8 of London's most ruthless mobsters had every reason to want Gwyneth out of the way. Not only did she take herself from one gang leader to another, but she also took secret information about the plans of rival gangs. Detectives are now following up a theory that she was murdered in the East End and her body was taken by boat up the Thames to the west.
Not only does this make no logical sense, but detectives stated,
this is a theory without any merit.
But without a gripping and sensational story, newspapers very quickly go out of business. In many articles written about Gwyneth's death, with no explanation, reference is made to 21-year-old Kathleen Heathcote's murder 2 weeks later, and 150 miles north in Mansfield, Nottinghamshire. Nothing connects them except they were both young petite brunettes. But Kathleen wasn't a sex worker, and before Jack the Stripper had even struck, Ronald Evans, the Clifton rapist, was convicted of her murder. The press also tried to link Gwyneth's unprovable death to the murder of 16-year-old Carol Ann White in West Drayton, 10 miles west, and 13 months before, simply because she was found near and not on a rubbish tip. But before Gwyneth was even dead, her killer, Edward Garlick, was convicted. And that's the problem with Jack the Stripper. Even before a serial killer theory was mooted, and he was gifted a moniker by the press, harking back to Britain's most bankable killer, Jack the Ripper, the myths, lies, misinformation and conspiracy theories had already begun. And although at least 2 unofficial murders, one the coroner refused to rule out as an accident, were only linked by highly disputable details, it still led to one of London's greatest unsolved serial killings, which may not have existed. Undressing Jack the Stripper continues next week with Part B, the second part of my series. With the first part of Undressing Jack the Stripper by Paul at the True Crime Enthusiast podcast, out now. Oh, there we go, folks. We're back. We're back. It probably feels weird because I'm just going to get rid of my little thingy here. That sounds weird. I'm saying get rid of my thingy. What I mean is your little hat and your little Defender, that pop filter. Going to move you forwards. Oh, for you it probably feels like it was just last week because technically it was. But I finished all those episodes about 5 weeks ago to give me time to research this series. And oh God, I was on the phone with Paul last night and we all agree Jack the Stripper is just a mess. It really is. So that's really why we wanted to cover this. It's something that on the outside, if you look at a lot of documentaries about it, it seems very clear cut, but it's only when you really dive in deep into it, you start seeing all of the faults. And when you've researched enough murders and all the facts about it, and you can see how many of them are clear cut and there's consistency, with this one there isn't, which is why we really wanted to I just wanted to rip it apart. I wanted to rip all of it apart. So this is my part 1. This is about the unofficial murders. Paul's doing his 4-parter as well. So as we did with the Patrick Mackay series, we've created a series that's independent. So you can listen to them separately if you want to, or just listen to mine, or just listen to Paul's. It would be great to listen to both, because what we're doing is I'm doing a certain thing and Paul's doing a certain thing. So the idea is that they complement each other and they kind of work together. So even if you hear the same piece of information, we're coming at it from different angles, and we're attacking it in different ways. So that's what we're doing. So yeah, it's all exciting. Update on me. I finally moved the boat. Oh, it was... they finally opened the locks. I think it was the 20th of March. I went through with a guy around the corner, Dan, and we did a whole day boating together. We did a lot. We made it from Tring to Leighton Buzzard, and we did them all. His boat broke down part way, so I had to carry his boat, kind of tie it to mine and guide it in, and we were exhausted by the end. Like, we had a pint, we did some shopping to get some food, and we were meant to go back to the pub, and both of us were just like, we're knackered. So I've started my journey. I'm moving north slowly, like very slowly. And as I'm going around the country, I'm filming little videos, 90-second videos of all these murder locations in these little villages and towns and places like that. So have a look if you want to. It's on all my social medias. I think I do one every day. I've been doing them since end of February. People seem to enjoy them, and it's nice. People who are local in their villages seem to enjoy them as well. They go, oh, I never knew about this murder in my own village. So it gets conversations going, which is good. So yeah, have a look at that if you want to. But yeah, no, Murder Mile is still here, and also it's bringing more people to the podcast as well, which was kind of the plan as well. So thank you to new Patreon subscribers, and I apologise to them. I have messaged them and said I apologise for the delay. Obviously, some of these people subscribed to Patreon ages ago, but obviously I hadn't got any new episodes ready to go until this one. So thank you to Will Jennings, thank you to Lou, thank you to Amy Mixon, and thank you to Pam Canbaz. I know some will be new to the Murder Mile, and some will be regular subscribers, and that you've renewed for the year. So thank you very much. It's much appreciated. Whoa. Let's do some quiz questions about this, and then we'll dive into some stuff that may not have made it into the episode. So here's 8 questions. Let's see how many of them you got. Question number 1. What was Elizabeth Figg's nickname? Come on, this is an easy one. You should be able to guess this one. Nice and easy. Question number 2. Which boxer would... Do you know, I recorded that really swiftly and smoothly with barely a stutter, and my dyslexia wasn't playing up. Even though I'm in an area, it's nice and quiet, but I'm next to a really busy tunnel, and there's a lot of boats going by. But that was fine, but only now, I think it's because I'm tired now. Now my brain's playing up. Right, let's try and read this. Which boxer would Fenwick Baby Ward spar with? Question number 3. What was Elizabeth's alias? Question number 4. Why did Elizabeth and Pauline not pick up men in Haringey after 11 p.m? Question number 5. How hot was the London heatwave in 1959? Question number 6. What did Ernest Patrick Forrest, Elizabeth's last known client, do as a job? Question number 7. How much did Elizabeth charge to spend a whole night with her? And question number 8. By Barnes Bridge, where Elizabeth's body would later be found, that is used as a marker for which entirely pointless so-called sporting event? Right, we'll get back to those in a second. So yeah, I've enjoyed doing this one, but it is a complete head F. It really is. Like there's I think I knew pretty much the same as everyone else when I approached this. I was like, I think I know about the Hammersmith News, Jack the Stripper, and I always wanted to get into it. But every year I would send my Freedom of Information request to the National Archives to get the original files declassified, and they won't, because we've still got another 40 years to go, and they won't. So it got to the point where me and Paul were looking after Patrick Mackay. Me and Paul were looking for a new series to do together, because we enjoyed doing it together last time. And I said Hammersmith News, and he was like, "Great." I thought he would have covered it already, but he hadn't, and he thought I would have covered it, and I hadn't. So it made sense. We both, do you know what we're like? We both get very excited about these kind of things. Like we have long conversations on the phone about cases, and we're just bombarding each other with information and just chatting through all the theories. And yeah, this one is fascinating. So we're doing 4 parts each. Mine is, this is my part 1, and my part 1 is about the unofficial murders. So the first 2, which are regarded as the unofficial ones, obviously each of them are broke down into separate parts, and we will dive into that shortly. So if you know about the case and you're like, oh, why has he missed this bit? Don't forget there's 3 parts still to go. So I'm diving into bits piece by piece as I go through, and not just blurting everything out at the same time. So yeah, there's lots to explore. Hang on, let me just go through my notes. There's a lot coming up, so there's a lot that I don't want to spoil. But yeah, I've done a lot of independent research on this. There's lots of It is easy just to, like a lot of the press do this, they just get other press articles and they copy and paste and they don't really think about it, whereas what I like to do is I break everything down and then I start thinking about what does this mean and how can we explain this, and just trying to find a new angle on everything rather than just accepting things for what it is. And I think that's the problem with true crime, is people just go, well, this is what the newspaper said, so I'll copy and paste it. But what you need to do is think. You need to think for yourself and think, why is this being said? Who is saying it? What is their motive? And just re-angle it. And especially here, this is a series of murders where you should be deluged with fact, but unfortunately you're not. You're deluged with myths and lies and conspiracy theories and misinformation. So that's what this is about. It's trying to get rid of all of the crap and then break it down and go, right, okay, what is the truth? So obviously all of these victims are called the Hammersmith Nudes, and he is known as Jack the Stripper. So if you didn't know anything about this case, you would assume that all of the women were naked. All of the women had been stripped. But as we start, Elizabeth Figg, not stripped. She's wearing a dress. The dress is slightly torn, but it may have been as she was dragged out of the car. So we just don't know. Obviously with Gwyneth Reese, she is naked except for one stocking, and we will, in part B, we'll be diving into the reasons why. So everything that we kind of know about Jack the Stripper, I will be interrogating fully, not just going, she was found naked, there was a stocking on her leg. Okay, thank you. It's everything has to be interrogated. With these, of course, this is where the similarities lie. Obviously, they tried to say that they were both young petite brunettes, but as you can see, it doesn't really narrow them down, and also the details are slightly sketchy on that as well, especially with their heights as well. Like almost everyone says, oh, all the women were around 5'2" or less. But you look at it, and some were 5'3", and obviously we've got Elizabeth Figg, and she's 5'5.5", which is the top end of an average woman's height, and she was wearing 2 to 3 inch heels, which makes her higher than the average UK male in the 1960s. So if he was looking for very petite women, and some of them were like just 5 foot tall, she would have been equal height to a man. And they do kind of assume that we dive into this later on, they do kind of assume that he picked smaller women because he was probably of small stature himself, but she was wearing heels. And this is nearer just after the Street Offences Act, so they were trying to cut down on curb crawling because you know a lot of prostitutes and punters were being picked up in posher areas, so the police were trying to push them away from posher areas where the chief constable probably lives. So what they started doing was picking up their customers in pubs, because you can't differentiate someone just dating in a pub and a prostitute picking up a client. So if you consider it that way, if someone's picking up a woman in a car and he's sitting in his car and he's going, how much, love? He can't really tell her height. Whereas if they meet in a pub, they're face to face and they're eye to eye, and you can tell, you can quickly, knowing that you're 5'6", you can determine other people's heights. It's much easier. But of course, she's wearing heels. So that kind of breaks all this down. That's what I'm trying to do with this, is just interrogate every single detail. And we've got all the other ladies' heights as well. It's weird when you read it in the press and they go, oh, she was such and such height. But I've had to wait until we could get the details from the coroner's reports where they list their official heights. And then suddenly you go, oh, okay, everything's wrong. Everything's wrong that we suspected prior. Sorry, I've been recovering from that horrible infection that everyone had recently. I was travelling in my boat. I did a couple of days travelling. I went through a lock, and the lock had a swing bridge in it, and I hadn't locked it in place. And as I was pulling 15 tons of boat to the left, the swing bridge that was in the middle of the lock started to come out, and I couldn't stop it. And that's like 3 tons of swing bridge, and it went through my window, and I couldn't find anyone to fix my window. I managed to find a guy eventually. It was like I had to move 15 miles ahead, which is a long way in a canal boat when you're going at like 2 miles an hour. And because it was Easter holiday as well, it took about 2 weeks to fix. And the day I had my window boarded up, I got sick with the virus. And then when it finally finished, I started to get over the virus as well. So, that virus has been horrible anyway. God, yeah, no, new window in, I can see out my window now. It's really depressing not having a window. I hadn't appreciated what a lack of light does to you physically and mentally. It really drained me. So, it's I'm looking out my window now at a nice wharfage opposite. So, it's lovely. Let's keep going through. Hang on. I have 187 pages of notes. So I'm just scrolling down these. Okay, let's dive into Elizabeth Figg. So her last moments. Okay, so we know that around 11:30, 11:45 p.m. She was picked up by Ernest Patrick Forrest of Springdale Road in Stamford Hill. So in and around the same area that she was living as well. So it's likely that you may have known her before. He probably did. He wanted to spend the night with her. She said she had an appointment at Holland Park at around 2 a.m. So they agreed to have sex in the back of his car on Mount View Road in Hornsey, so not too far away. And he paid 30 shillings for that. That's not one of the quiz questions. He also agreed, this was standard with a lot of prostitutes who had sex with men in cars, is that they would find a place to drive to somewhere quiet to have sex in cars away from everyone. But the agreement was that he would pay them money, but he wouldn't just leave her there. He would go, if she needs to be somewhere afterwards, he would drive her there. And even though this is a 45-minute journey on top of having the sexy time, so he drove her down to Holland Park and dropped her off there. I think there is something kind of interesting here, is that he clearly likes her. He wanted to have sex with her, but he also wanted to spend the night with her. So I think there's something, inverted commas, romantic going on there. So you could kind of say, perhaps, that maybe it was a jealousy, given the fact that she had an appointment at 2 a.m. But it's hard to be proven. Do you know, he did turn around to the police at the end and he said, I was one of the last people to see her, if not the last person supposed to see it. And he did give up his flat and his car for the police to investigate, but that was a couple of weeks later. He was said to be a devout Christian. He was said to be upset about hearing that she was murdered, hence he did that. But there is a real problem here, isn't there? Like, a lot of people reference the landlord of the ship and his wife. So this is opposite Duke's Meadow, hearing a scream and seeing some car lights at 12:05 a.m, which is around the time that she was murdered. But the problem is the distance is just under half a mile away. It's a dark area. It's unlit. And there's lots of cars coming in and out. So they couldn't tell what kind of car it was. They couldn't see the couple. All they could hear was a scream and headlights. And it was a warm night and it was a busy area. It's as I mentioned, 31 acres, and a lot of courting couples and sex workers use it as a place to do the old ooh la la. So, you know, it's... The police initially at the start did say, this points to where Elizabeth was murdered, that time and that place. But it doesn't. It just proves there was a scream. Because obviously the body wasn't found for another 5 hours. So, and there was no one who witnessed the murder. So, yeah, there's a bit of an issue there. Obviously, Ernest said that he picked her up in Holland Park. He picked her up in Finsbury Park, then drove her down to Holland Park, and that for 2 hours he waited for her, and he was kind of circling around the West End. That could be an optimum moment if he was her murderer to have murdered her. but the police said there was they couldn't find any trace of her movements, and there was nothing to kind of tie him to her murder as well. So that is kind of all we know about that. As mentioned, there's a lot of misinformation in there. All of the news reports reference her being propped up, and initially when I read that I thought, great, a serial killer, and they all talked about how parts of her dress had been kind of flattened down, her legs had been crossed over, I think one of her arms was crossed over, her head was leaning against the tree, and it looked like she'd been not dumped there, but propped up there to make it look like someone had murdered her and tried to make it look like she was sleeping, which is interesting because one of the later killings that we'll look into, there was also the reference of one of the women being propped up. But as you can see here, there was clearly a difference between being propped up and being dumped, and then having the officers come over and check her vital signs, because obviously they were they thought that she could possibly be alive, but obviously she wasn't. And of course she wasn't stripped, and there was no proof that her killer had attempted to undo her clothing. As I said, tears to the dresses were probably caused as the body was dragged from the car. There's constant reports in there saying where was her underwear, but it was a hot night. If you think about it, if you're a prostitute and you're going to be having sex with regular clients throughout the night, and it's a hot night anyway, would you really be wearing some knickers, or would you go commando and then you can just hitch up with your skirt? It just makes a lot more sense, doesn't it? You would, if your job is to partially take off your clothes, you would make sure that you're not wearing something difficult that you have to be like, oh no, I just need to undo my belt and my zip and all these poppers down the side. You would wear a skirt that you could just hitch up, I hate to be crude, bend over somewhere and then do the business, get your money and then leave. You want to be in and out as quick as possible. And obviously sex in cars as well, so it's highly likely that these women would have taken their shoes off in order to have that done, because it's not easy to have sex in a car while wearing shoes, apparently. Also a handbag. I mean, if she was being strangled in the car, would she really grab her handbag at that last moment and grab her handbag and her jewellery and make sure that she's got everything with her? No, of course not. So there's... I'm just looking at these. Also, there's no evidence that she was sexually assaulted or that any of these women were sexually assaulted, which I think is interesting, especially given the fact that they're all nude or near as nude, or one wasn't nude. But you would all assume that it's sexually motivated, but it doesn't seem to be. We will dive into that. There's a big chunk about that next week as well. So, lots to explore. Strangulation seems to be a common theme amongst this, but then again, if you think about it, how many times have we dealt with the murder of a prostitute and strangulation is involved? Because it doesn't really require, you can do it with your hands, but also you can do it with a ligature, such as their stocking or your tie or a belt or a shoelace or anything that comes to hand. Where was I going with that? I can't remember where I was going with that. Yeah, strangulation seems to be a common thing around all of these cases anyway. So, it's not like it's unique. It's not like he's pulling out a unique knife and carving something into their body and, or stamping on their heads or something that stands out. This is just something that we've seen many times before. And also, strangulation is very much associated with sex, and you have these kind of men who would pick up prostitutes and probably want them to do something that they wouldn't want to do ordinarily, and some of them would want to do sex and strangulation, and with some of the prostitutes they will accept that they will be into S&M and things like, even with the Blackout Ripper, like Doris Joanne. Her thing was S&M. Her thing was like hurting men, and that's what whipping and bondage and all that kind of stuff. That's what she was into, and that's why she was paid the big bucks, because she would do that. But of course, you've got men going around picking up prostitutes, maybe knowing what they're into, maybe not knowing what they're into, maybe just assuming that they're a prostitute and therefore they must all be into S&M and strangulation and all that kind of thing. And also, let's not forget, Elizabeth is brand new. She's only been in inverted commas the business for a couple of weeks, so she's still new, she's still fresh. She probably hasn't experienced any, if many, assaults at that point, and she doesn't really understand how to cope in these situations. Unlike her friend Pauline, who apparently had been doing it for years. So her Fenwick baby Ward, it's hard to pin down who he is. Like some people, he's referred to as her pimp, a violent ponce, and very capable of the killing. But then again, yeah, who isn't really? It's not really difficult. There was a lot of lies kind of written about him in there, like that. They said he last saw her in a pub in Notting Hill. He wasn't even in Notting Hill. That kind of puts him near the Bayswater area, so people were like, "Oh, it must be him," but he wasn't there. He was in Stamford Hill. It's just lazy journalism at this point. Obviously, he gave his name to the police, as did Ernest Forrest as well, but they were both ruled out. Let me just dive on quickly to Gwyneth. So, of the likely suspects, 20-year-old Mickey Calvey, he was at that point in prison for theft. He had asked her to visit him. He was the father of one of her children, apparently. She was meant to visit him in prison. She didn't. So men started visiting her and threatening her, demanding money. Apparently this was to fund his legal fees or something like that. She'd been threatened with an axe. On an unspecified date, she disappeared for 3 days, then returned beaten up and covered in blood. She was saying that the gang had beaten her up. He was an armed robber. He was shot in 1978 by the police. Good riddance. George Kitchener Dixon was Calvey's right-hand man and, as mentioned, was an associate of the Cray twins. The Cray twins were questioned about this murder because obviously their name cropped up every so often, but their lawyer advised them to say nothing. That was when they were shown the photo of Gwyneth Reese. But, you know, lawyers do that. June 1963, so 3 months before the murder, she was in Poplar Hospital, having been dragged along the road by a car whose driver had got into an argument with her. She was said to have cuts to her legs and feet. So as you can see, dangerous times, a dangerous occupation. And Cornelius Whitehead, who was another associate of the Crays, was jailed alongside them in 1969 as an accessory to the murder of Jack the Hat McVitie. Francis. Whitehead, he was Gwyneth Reese's pimp. He earned off her, frequently gave her black eyes and a broken nose. And when she started working for another pimp called Victor Hat, he knocked her around. She left him in late September, and as mentioned, word on the street that he was looking for her and he wanted to teach her a lesson. But obviously there's no evidence to tie him to her murder. But of course there was a wall of silence which protected all of these criminals. And if you're a sex worker, you're not really going to turn around and go, yeah, these violent people, yeah, let me just name them, because you are as good as dead. So, yeah. Let me just check what I've got here. Yeah, she wasn't doing well at the time. She was said to be malnourished, battered, and living on Purple Hearts, which is a Drinamil, like a pep pill to keep her up all night. That's something we dive into next week, which is kind of a use of drugs as well. What else we got? Police were also said to be looking for a man known as Terry, about 34 years old, 5'8". It's a bit specific, that, isn't it? It's like they're looking for a man called Terry, about 34. If it's about, you would say 35. You wouldn't say about 34. It's just a bit specific. 5'8", well built, with a red Indian tattoo on his right arm and a rose on the back of his right hand. Well, I wonder who that could be. And as mentioned, we've already got in there as well, the press just creating bullshit in there. We will dive into this next week. I've got some really interesting things about the origins of Jack the Stripper that we'll dive into. We're not gonna do comparisons with Jack the Ripper, because you know my feelings on Jack the Ripper. It's a load of old BS. But I think this is an interesting case, and if it's kind of interesting. You look at the Jack the Ripper, and then you look at the Blackout Ripper, which is a proper Ripper. And then you look at the Soho Strangler, which is kind of a fake attempt by the press to lump together a series of murders, potentially in the vein of Jack the Ripper, which may have been true or may have not been true. Have a listen to the series, it's very good. And then
we dive into this. And this is clearly a series of murders, but it's unclear whether it is a serial killer or whether it's just myth and all that. With the murder of Gwyneth Reese, there's a lot of reports in there where they say she was found in a trash dump beside the Ship, which was the pub. This is incorrect. That's about a quarter of a mile away. And the reason it's linked together is because we have the witness who say that they saw the headlights and a woman scream in Duke's Meadows. By linking that, which is Elizabeth Figg, and then linking this one, which is Gwyneth Reese, therefore that's another connection, but it's incorrect. If you look at the maps, it's about a quarter to a third of a mile away. It's not really in the same area. Also, it was a secure site as well. So, Patrick Deneen, the mechanical digger driver. There's a lot of reports where people say it was someone digging with spades. It wasn't. It was a mechanical digger, which is the problem. As he was digging down, he initially thought it was an animal. People just dumped dead animals on the tip. So he was used to horrible smells. But pulling up his scoop, he saw legs hanging out. And it was only when the pathologist turned up that he realised that his scoop had actually gone through and decapitated her head. So that caused even more damage. And also, because it had been there for roughly around 2 months, the mechanical digger had been going over the land back and forth, and kind of levelling it down. Therefore, that had crushed a lot of her bones, and she was badly decomposed. Weirdly, some parts of her body were badly decomposed, other parts not too bad, which is luckily why they had a finger that was available. Therefore, they could fingerprint her off that. They couldn't have done what they did with Elizabeth Figg, which was what they did was they got, because she was freshly dead, they propped her up. They kept her eyes open. I think they said there was something like matchsticks kept underneath to keep her eyes open, and they photographed her and put it in the newspapers. And if you didn't know she was dead, you just think she looks a little bit sleepy. So they did that. And that's exactly the same as they did 10 years later in the episode about the unholy... Oh, what's it called? I think it's just called The Unholy. It was about the murder of the young boy in Tattingstone that I did a while ago. They did the same there, where they couldn't work out who he was, so they did the autopsy picture of him. And this is what they did with Elizabeth Figg, and it worked, but obviously with Gwyneth Reese, because she was so badly decomposed. Like they said, she was... Some of her internal organs, like you couldn't tell... It was so badly putrefied that they just couldn't do that. Hence there were teeth missing, hence other things as well. I think that's it, folks. Yeah, I think that's all I want to do on that. Yeah, I don't want to say any more because we've got a lot to cover next week. So let's scroll up to the quiz questions. This is amazing. We haven't had any boats go past. When I was finishing the writing on this morning, they were going past at a rate of like one every couple of minutes. And it's horrible because the boat rocks and everything on my wall starts shaking. And it's really horrible. But one hasn't gone past for about an hour. Great. Maybe they're having lunch. So let's do the quiz questions. Question 1, what was Elizabeth Figg's nickname? It was Betty. Of course it was. The abbreviation of Elizabeth. Question number 2, which boxer would Fenwick Baby Ward spar with? It was, of course, Henry Cooper. Splash it on. Question number 3, what was Elizabeth's alias? It was Anne Phillips. Question number 4, why did Elizabeth and Pauline not pick up men in Haringey after 11 p.m? Because the workers on the Victoria Line extension were said to be too drunk and abusive. Question number 5, how hot was the London heatwave in 1959? It was 27 degrees, and it lasted for 3 days. I think that shows you how, even though there'll be people out there going, the climate change, it doesn't exist, there's no proof for it. Just open the newspapers from the 1960s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and you look for the words heatwave, and then have a look at it. 27 degrees for 3 days. Like 27 degrees now over these summers that we have now, 27 degrees is nice and cool for us. Like we average like 35 over a summer now. Some places 40. It's going to get even higher. So there's your proof right there. Just look at the old papers. Question number 6. What did Ernest Patrick Forrest, Elizabeth's last known client, do as a job? He was a builder, which is amazing that he actually turned up on time to pick her up later on. Hey! Question number 7. How much did Elizabeth charge to spend the whole night with her? It was £4. And question number 8. By Barnes Bridge, near where Elizabeth's body was found, that is used as a marker for which pointless so-called sporting event? It is, of course, the boat race, which, if you don't know about it, it's an entirely pointless historical race between one boat from Cambridge University and one boat from Oxford University, and they race between each other, and no other university is allowed to take part. And when I used to work at the BBC, there was always arguments about funding for sport, and the only thing that wouldn't be argued was whether the boat race was on telly. And why was that? Because most people in the BBC either went to Cambridge or Oxford, and they regard it as important, and it's not. It's bullshit. So there we go, folks. That was part A of Jack the Stripper. I hope you enjoyed it. Back next week. Don't forget to tell your friends. Subscribe to Murder. Subscribe to Patreon. If you want to, don't forget to listen to Paul's series over at the True Crime Enthusiast. His episode 1 is out now. We're putting out our episodes same day, Thursdays, 4 a.m. same time. So there you go. Thank you for listening to the show. It's much appreciated. Have yourself a good week. Stay safe. Bye.
Want more true crime? This podcast and loads more are part of the Always True Crime Network. It's packed with box sets to binge and twisted tales you won't find anywhere else. Find your next podcast obsession at alwaystruecrime.com.